Hello, Sit Room executives. I am pleased to bring to you one of the young heavy hitters in the multifamily industry. By the time he was 24, Chris Salerno successfully transacted more than $40 million in real estate and helped lead the number one real estate team in the Carolinas to produce more than $140 million in annual sales. He was named Charlotte's 30 Under 30, Elite 50 Entrepreneurs, 30 Under 30 Entrepreneurs, and nominated for Forbes 30 Under 30. Recently, he started his own podcast and thought leadership platform called the Mindful Multifamily Podcast. Well, this is exciting. We have Chris Salerno, the CEO of QC Capital, hailing from Charlotte, North Carolina, joining us again. For those of you that have been following the Multifamily Investor Situation Room podcast, you might have heard him on episode 10, I really appreciate him joining us again this time. There are many new things that's going on with him in his business, and he's going to share that with us today. Chris, welcome back. I really appreciate you coming on again.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to share some secrets from episode 10. To be honest, I can't even remember it because so much has happened since then. So I'm so excited to give out my secrets that I am using right now and let people know what's different.
Awesome. Yeah, last time we talked about, getting out of your comfort zone, kind of a lot about like mindset, because I know, last year, I think it was July that we first had our conversation. Oof. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And, a lot of it was just mindset, because I think that if I remember correctly, you were transitioning to the multifamily space. I think you were about 8 or 9 months in about that time, right? Was that right?
Well, January, it was February 1st. So
February 1st.
What? That's 5 months, 4 months?
5 months. Okay.
5 months. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember, and you talked about the whole mindset shift, and you're walking people through that and helping them, trying to get through that themselves, different strategies you had for that. So it was a really good episode. So with a lot of really good points. Now, I know a lot of really new things have been going on with you. First of all, congratulations. You're a new dad.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
And
kept me up last night.
Yeah, I was going to say, so how is that treating you? I mean, how are you finding, the whole life work balance now?
It's extremely difficult, but he is an accountability partner to wake me up at 5 a.m. on the dot. So I definitely love that. But it's extremely difficult, but I do have to give it to my fiance, because she watches him during the day while I work, and we take turns throughout each night. We take turns to stay up to take care of him. So I think it's with her, it's been definitely a big help. It's been a blessing to have her, really understand about the company, my work ethic, and my our goals as a family, and our goals as a company to achieve those goals. That it needs a lot of my time. So it's been tremendous when it comes to with her helping.
So that explains why. Now I know why I saw that post from you on Facebook. I think it was like 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yep. Sometimes, right then I'm just like, does it make sense to go back, to sleep for another hour? It may some days, but normally I try to just stay up and power through it and get the day started early.
Yeah, just keep going through. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So on the business front, I know that your company's been growing too.
Yeah.
I saw a few of the emails from you that you hired a full-time acquisitions associate as well
Correct.
as an intern. So,
Yes.
tell us about that. I mean, how did that come about, and what was the thought process behind that?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so we have a full-time acquisition, an intern, and then we also have an underwriter. But he's under the radar right now until he comes on full-time because he's a big name in my opinion. So I'm
Mhm.
not letting that get out. So he's been a tremendous help to us as well. I'm a big believer, in any business partnership or your business partner that you find. I'm a big believer is don't force it. And my example is that you're not going to go to the bar and marry someone the first time you see them. Now, you may, take her home or, you take the other individual home and go on another date or, but you're going to date for a while before you marry that individual. You're not just going to marry him the first night. And that's like a business partner. A business partner, you're not going to meet the first time and say, okay, let's create a company together.
Mhm.
You're going to nurture that relationship and then create a company. So I don't look for individuals. I put it into my universe, and I tell now my individuals who work with us, I tell them, this is what I'm looking for, and I put it into the universe and I let it just come find me. And my acquisition specialist actually found me, and he looked to add value to me the first time we met, and that's a big thing. Is if a lot of people follow me on social media, they know I love to add value to people, and I don't ask for anything in return, and that's what he did. So our conversation sparked up, and he actually was a multifamily specialist for Marcus and Millichap for the Carolinas. So it happened to work out perfectly. And then when it comes to the intern, I was speaking at a local college real estate club, and was chatting about my background, what we're doing, and a lot of individuals were there. And I'm all about follow up and staying consistent. So I reached out to the president and said, "Hey, let's just I'd like to have a couple interns, and this is the details of their job duties." I had like 3 or 4 people that applied, but only one person followed up on a consistent basis, and that's the gentleman who I have right now. So I'm big about follow up. I think if all of them followed up, they probably would all have a position, here, but only one did, so I only took one.
That reminded me what you just said about follow up. I remember I attended a RIA meeting. This was back when I was in university, what, like maybe 16 years ago at Ohio State. And I attended a RIA meeting then, and we had a speaker. We were in a room of about 500 people,
Oh
and
wow.
he stood up. The speaker stood at the front of the room on the stage, and he had literally $5,000 in cash. And he said, "Who wants $5,000?" And he held it up just like this, and all the hands in the room went up. Only one guy ran up to the stage, grabbed it out of his hand, and you know what? He was like, "You got it," and he gave it to him.
Wow.
Yeah, he
Wow,
gave it
there
to
you
him.
go.
Yeah, and he said, his message was simply, if you really want something, you have to go and get it. And he's
That's
like,
right.
it doesn't matter, he's like, it doesn't matter what it takes, you just go and get it. You don't say you want to get it. You have to go and get it. And if you have to keep following up, you keep following up. And that was his message. Yeah.
Very nice. I love it.
Mhm.
That's good. I'm going to take that.
So, there was one other thing that I remember too. Like you just mentioned, you were doing some speaking events, and I know there was another one. I think it was. I correct me if I'm wrong. Was it L.A. or I know it was somewhere in the
It
West
was
Coast?
Anaheim. Yeah, it was
Anaheim.
Anaheim.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So what was that about, and what'd you talk about?
Yeah, so that was a little different. So I don't always do multifamily events. So this one was a little different. It was a note investing. And the reason why I wanted to attend it was because a note investor looks for passive income, but they don't get the tax benefits that they would in the multifamily space. So I was excited to speak about raising capital in multifamily. I was the only multifamily person there. And on the panel, I would say the second to youngest was like 50, late in the late 50s.
Wow.
So very experienced individuals there. Learned a lot of great information. But yeah, it was a great time. Met a lot of great people who invest in the notes and who are looking to invest in the multifamily. And then went and grabbed some lunch and dinner with some other investors out there. So it was nice.
Great. So you sought out these speaking opportunities, or I think a lot of people are just reaching out to you now because I know you have a new Facebook group that you started, and
Oh
actually you
yeah,
have a thought leadership platform right now, right? The
I do.
Multifamily podcast.
Yeah, I have the Mindful Multifamily podcast. I have the Mindful Multifamily Network closed Facebook group where
Hmm.
anyone and everyone can join to network alongside myself and other individuals. I do post content in there that I do not post on my page, so it does help a lot of people. I just posted something about the SEC changing Regulation A and Regulation D, so that was extremely beneficial for a lot of individuals. And I do have a coaching program, but I don't market it. But it's the mindfulmultifamilyacademy.com, but I don't market it or anything like that. So, yeah, just trying to help and educate people.
So a lot of things, just so many changes that's happened just in the past. What it's been since the last time we spoke, face to face via video chat. It was July, right? So a lot of new things. So what's your plan, going forward right now?
Plan going forward is
Hmm.
to grow the company. We have large goals for 2020, and we are very heavily focused on the Raleigh, Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina, Charleston of the Carolinas. We're slowly looking into Atlanta, Tampa, and Orlando of the East Coast. So right now is just solely growing the company with more acquisitions, but numbers have to make sense. Like we chatted before this, is that we lost out on a handful of assets, but we weren't willing to pay the price, and some we just did not feel comfortable with. And when it comes to that, we really stand our ground to our criteria to ensure that the numbers make sense for us and any individual who invest into the entity that owns the property.
So what's the big challenge that you're seeing right now in your area in the marketplace?
Yeah, a big challenge we're seeing in the Carolinas is pricing is getting very high, which is that's what we're seeing. We're also seeing that the hard money is also getting extremely high, and what I mean by that is hard money for your earnest deposit, where you are willing to put it down and willing to risk it. Normally, some people tell me they put 1 to 300,000. The last deal I lost out on, I put 400, and the other group put 1.1.
Wow.
So we're seeing a lot of larger groups put anywhere from 800 to 1.2 million hard day one, which is very difficult to compete with. But also, do you want to compete with that and do that? I don't see I just don't see it being feasible to do something like that.
Mhm. So let's tell our listeners a little bit about the experience, a little bit about what we talked about regarding the hedge funds. So
Yeah.
you said a lot of these hedge funds that you had lost some of these deals to recently, they're coming in with all cash. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so they're coming in with all cash from what I've seen, and in my opinion, they're doing one or two things. They're either refinancing the property, taking some of their equity out, and then holding the property, doing their value add play, and then either refinancing again or selling for a profit. The second one is it's a little hard because they may have to pay capital gain tax. So what they do is they pay cash for it, then they sell it to another entity that they own, and then from there what they do is that they go ahead and either 1031 the funds that they for the capital gain tax. They 1031 it, and then they go ahead and deploy it in another asset.
So it basically, with this strategy, I mean, coming in all cash, it's kind of a little bit more difficult, to look at the seller, and the seller is comparing two offers, and one has financing and the other one's all cash. Then
Oh yeah, very difficult.
are they these all cash offers, are their closing times much shorter, or?
They are too. That's one
Mhm.
thing that we're seeing too is the due diligence is shorter and the closing time's a lot shorter. So if your average for any operator out there, syndicator out there, if your average is 60 to 90 days for a closing time, theirs may be 30 to 45 days,
Wow.
which was it's hard to beat.
Wow. Yeah, that is really tough. 30 or 45 days, man. Okay. So based off of this experience, then, how do you see, or what do you see as being a potential workaround to kind of, deal with this type of a challenge?
Yeah, great question. So here's a big secret that I've only let a couple people know, and just for your listeners. So, I always love giving back my knowledge. So what we have done is that we have secured a commitment letter from a business partner that would be partnering with us into the deal, and they have a commitment letter of around 8.1 million, and then also proof of funds. So we are able to go ahead and show that, which, but when you're dealing with a huge hedge fund, it's irrelevant. But we are able to go ahead and show that, showing that we have a commitment letter of that amount, or that, not that exact amount, but in that ballpark. And then we have a certain amount of proof of funds that we go ahead and submit as well. So we can have the sellers feel more comfortable with accepting our offer, because, right now when it comes to the syndication space, it is, a 50-50 shot with the seller, because a lot of people are wanting to get into the syndication space, but not necessarily they can close, or they have a track record, or, who knows, who they are. So that just gives that extra comfort to the seller.
Mhm. So securing a proof of funds letter from a partner, so they're coming on basically as the equity partner, correct?
No, they're coming on as a GP partner, as
Okay.
a KP and sponsor.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Got it, got it. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. And so, but yeah, I mean, still, that is quite challenging to compete
Oh
with,
yeah.
kind of those larger funds and everything on that. Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah. So how do you see this, kind of playing out then in the long run? I mean, there are just so many changes. And I mean, like, you just look at just the industry wide type changes right now. I mean, you look at the overall compression of the cap rates, the continual decline in the interest rates. You have these funds coming in paying exorbitant prices for properties. I mean, these, and like you said, based off of your underwriting and everything, like, these deals, a lot of them just don't make sense, right?
That's right.
But these guys
Yeah.
are still doing it. So how do you see this kind of playing out, like, over the next few years?
I say, you never know when it comes to it. And if you're buying in the right location, I know I posted on Facebook, if you go back and span the last 30, 40, 50 years, real estate has always been on an increase, no matter, '01 or '08, where we've had a couple dips. It's always been on an increase. So, their business plan just may be different. Their business plan may be a hold for 10, 20, 30 years. Who knows? And I think that definitely plays into a factor when it comes to returns and what we're looking for compared to another group. Because someone may be underwriting the property at a 10-year while we're underwriting the property at a 5-year. And yes, our IRR may be different, but maybe they're willing to pay more because they know in 10 years that they're going to sell it for a lot more than if we could in 5 years. You never know. Where do I see it playing out? It's a very tricky. I don't see, if you're buying right in a great location, I feel that it's the asset's going to be extremely strong, because '08 2012 was a very strong market for multifamily. Not very strong, but it was strong, while other asset classes decreased and failed. So I definitely believe in multifamily being the asset, because it's a necessity. We need housing, so it's not going away.
Yeah. So, do you see yourself at all, perhaps maybe even diversifying into other assets like self storage? Because I've seen a lot of other investors out there, multifamily investors, doing that. And I've actually been contacted by a few, and there are a couple friends of mine too that are multifamily investors, but they've diversified into self storage as well. And I guess the returns that they're able to hit right now, IRR is typically like in the 20s, and in some cases.
Okay, yeah. So
Mhm.
I've seen some of stuff like that. I've looked into self storage, but personally, I'm all about right now really growing a strong multifamily portfolio. Will we diverse down the road? There's a high possibility that we'll diverse, but right now we're looking at B plus value add assets. We're also looking at A assets, and we are educating ourselves on ground up development.
Okay. So, interesting you mentioned the ground up development. Because I mean, and I'm sure you saw that too in the feed as well, in Facebook. And I noticed there have been a lot of value add investors asking these questions. So why do you think the shift to ground up development, that sort of a slight pivot? Because a lot of the investors I have interviewed recently, I can name a few, that are doing that right now. So
Yeah, when it comes to ground up development, it's making more sense, especially here in the Carolinas, as the B value add assets in the 90s are getting extremely close to brand new construction, and it just doesn't make sense to buy a 90s type of product and throw 10 grand into it, which you're going to deal with all those headaches when you can either do ground up, and there's headaches in anything you do, but you can either do ground up for a lot less and sell for a higher profit than a 90s type of product.
hmm yeah. Yeah, from that perspective, it does make sense. One thing that I was thinking of too, because I was looking into a little bit about this. I mean, I'm not really familiar with the whole ground up development process. That's not my area of expertise, but I was doing a little bit of research on it, and one of the things that was quite interesting to me was I found a statistic saying about 32% of the costs of the new construction is regulatory related, basically, which is, I mean, you figure that's extremely
Pretty
high.
large. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, really large. And then also that reminded me of a lot of the kind of the regulatory changes that have taken place, things in like New York with relation to like the rent stabilization laws and things, rent control. Also in where was that? I think it was in Seattle area, I believe.
Seattle,
Yeah,
California, and I believe Oregon as well.
yeah. So I'm, in how are things looking in Charlotte right now?
The Carolinas are very
Mhm.
strong. The Southeast Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, and Texas are very strong markets right now. I don't see any type of rent control or anything coming at
Mhm.
this moment. My big thing is that a lot of people want these rent controls, but when you really think about it, sellers won't be able to fix up the property anymore because they're not going to get any money back, and they're just going to buy a property and let it sit there. So over time, it's going to cause a lot of issues for the tenant and for the seller, and it just doesn't make sense at the end of the day. I think there definitely should be more affordable housing, but I don't think rent control is the way to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, rent control just really doesn't make sense. I don't think. I think if anything, perhaps we should consider subsidies or whatnot, or just even if it's not subsidies, to the developers to encourage building. At least not make the process a little bit easier, the permitting
Oh, I
process
agree.
and everything. That
I
would make more
agree.
sense.
Very much so. And if you think, these properties have rent control, and then, what's going on with taxes? Are the taxes increasing?
hmm
Unless you're in an opportunity zone and you have, special tax benefits. But if the taxes are increasing and you're now capped out at rent control, what's that mean for you as the owner for your profits? They're going
Yeah.
down. So you're not going to fix up the property. You're not going to, do anything. And then when you sell the property, you're really only selling for appreciation of the market. Because, for multifamily, we look at the rents and what we can achieve by the rents, and that will determine the price of the property. You can't do that in a rent control state, in my opinion, because we're all driven by what our performa will be, and what are the current rents and where we can get the rents to come up with a number to offer the seller. So if
Mhm.
it's a steady across the board, then you're really not going to gain any value unless it's just appreciation, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, I can agree with you on that. So let me ask you this question. When we're looking at people, like new people looking into this industry and wanting to get in, right? Uh, you're an experienced real estate investor. I mean, even
Thank
before
you.
real estate, you were in the brokerage, very successful, named 30 under 30. You
Thank
had
you.
like $140 million revenue, production, your business, what you're doing. I mean, doing very well. the average person, it's probably really difficult for them to do that, right? You
Oh
figure
yeah.
it can be done, but it's really challenging. You have to have really a certain mindset for that if we
Very
want to
much
be
so.
honest with ourselves, right? So if we see someone that says, "Hey, you know what? I want to get into this business. I want to do what, Chris is doing. I want to do what some of these other syndicators are doing." What should they do right now? Because I mean, like you said, you're competing with hedge funds right now,
Yeah.
and it's challenging for you. Let alone you've got this new guy that wants to get into the business. So, what would be your best piece of advice now for that person?
That's a great question. I love that question. One, I say this all the time: sit down with yourself and figure out your goals. Because when you sit down with yourself and you say, okay, well, my goal is to make 10,000 a month, passive income, just 10,000 a month. Okay, well, you can go and acquire a 20 to 80 unit apartment complex, a couple of them, where there's not that much competition. There'll always be competition, but there's not that much, and you can achieve that goal. But if you have larger goals to make 3, 4, 500,000 a month, you're going to have to do the bigger type of assets. And if you're not ready to hop straight into that or to compete with groups like ours or any other groups, then what you should do is, in my opinion, you should add value to a group and partner with them. If it comes to underwriting, if it's come to sourcing deals, if it's come to working inside during the due diligence, or if you can bring asset management experience, some sort of adding value to another group, and get them to have you on in the GP ownership side of things, where you can really get your feet wet and understanding how it's operated. Because a lot of people, it's it is difficult to find a deal. It's difficult to raise money for a deal. It's difficult for that whole process. But then once you have the deal, you need to make sure the deal operates correctly. So it's difficult to manage a property manager and all that. So I highly recommend partnering with a group when you first get started, or adding value to a group so you can partner with, because that will help limit your mistakes and really help you gain the education,
Mhm.
so you can have a long-lasting career in multifamily.
And speaking of education, in our last episode, you mentioned two books, Multifamily Millions, and another one was the Pour Your Heart by the Starbucks story. I think it was how
Yep, yep,
Starbucks
yep.
got started. Yep.
Yeah, Howard Schwartz.
Yeah. So, do you have any additional recommendations? Some recent books that you like?
Yeah, yeah. So, I for a really business book, I would say "Mistakes Millionaires Make" is a good book.
Mhm.
That book really speaks about individuals of growing large companies, growing large net worths, and losing it all, and then gaining it all back. So it really dives deep into how they lost it, why they lost it, and then gaining it all back. And then a new book that I'm reading called "King of Capital."
Mm.
And that is actually King of Capital is actually about Blackstone, and it's about Steve Schwartzman, on how he created Blackstone, his success, his trials, his errors, which were tremendous, how he left Lehman Brothers, all of that. So that's the new book that I'm currently reading, and I've just dug into it, and I'm in love with it already. So very excited.
Wonderful. So, how could our listeners get in touch with you? I think your website's under construction right now, right?
It is, yeah, yeah. We're doing a whole revamping, rebranding of it, so it should be done in less than a week and a half. So we're very excited about it.
All right. So, should they just reach out to you on Facebook or?
Yeah, great question. So
Mhm.
you can reach out to me on social media. My Instagram is Chris_Salerno_, or Facebook is Chris Salerno. Go ahead and join the Mindful Multifamily Network closed Facebook group, where we can network alongside of each other. And those are the ways right now to get in contact with me. You can feel free to message me, and we can dive deeper into our conversation.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. It was a pleasure having you join us again today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I was super excited to add value to everybody, and I'll see you guys later.
Woo!